Bat fans. This is Batman.
And Robin, the Boy Wonder.
And me too, Bat-Mite.
Welcoming you to the new adventures of Batman. Watch us wage our never-ending battle of good versus evil.
Ride with us as we chase the greatest array of villains the world has ever seen, proving that crime does not pay.
Get set for thrills and action. Join me, Batman.
And me, Robin the Boy Wonder.
And Batgirl. And me too, Bat-Mite.
In the super new adventures of
Batman.
Welcome back, citizens, to an all-new episode of the Batcave podcast. It's your old bat chum, John S. Drew here, and are you got a hankering for some sweets? Because we've got plenty to pass around this time here, and passing them out with abandon and glee is the man from Comic Book Central podcast, Mr. Joe Stuber. Hey, Joe.
Hey, John. Oh, man, I'm like on sugar overload with this one. This is like it's too much.
There is a lot of candy in this episode. In fact, we talked about it last episode. There's those questions I never expect an answer to. I've got one that I'm going to post to you shortly about the candy.
Yeah. Look, I love me some chocolate more than anybody, but boy, after watching this episode, I'm kind of like, I might be like, Robin in this one. It might be too much.
Yeah.
It's definitely the sweetest thing you and I are ever going to talk about. That's for sure.
Exactly. Now, the episode is called A Sweet Tooth in Gotham City, aired March 5th, 1977, written by Mark Fink. Now, that name doesn't sound familiar at all to me.
Well, here's the interesting thing. He also does, the Deep Freeze, reading, writing, and wronging for this. But after this, he went on to write and produce a bunch of sitcom episodes, including what I thought was one of the coolest things on his resume. Everybody remembers All in the Family, but then there was a spinoff series called Archie Bunker's Place that Jean Stapleton did not return for. She did not want to return for that. So how do you have a sitcom about Archie Bunker and not have Edith? Well, you kill her character off.
Yeah.
Right. There was the death of Edith Bunker. He wrote that up. Yeah, he wrote that episode. So, and he wrote a novel after that too. So I'm kind of checking online. I'm looking out there. I know he wrote a novel like maybe, I want to say like maybe 10, 15 years ago or so. There's somebody out there with the name on Facebook. I'm checking now. I'm still doing some research. So I'm trying to see if he's still around. Don't know. I haven't been able to confirm that yet. If he is, we can bring that to you here on the Batcave podcast. But yeah, this is a strange episode by Mr. Fink. But I love it. And again, we talked about this a few times on this animated series. We get a lot of firsts, and this is definitely one of them. I just, you could bring the Penguin, you could bring the Joker, but we've seen all that, right?
Yeah.
We haven't seen Sweet Tooth. We don't get an origin. Well, we kind of get a little bit of an origin. Maybe. I don't know. There's some you could kind of read into it. But one thing we do want to say is that it's not Paul Lynde doing the voice. I have been caught. You have saved me from myself so many times, my friend. Let's do a little inside baseball here. I thought it was Paul Lynde doing the voice. And look, in all fairness to me, I did do a little research, and one of the websites I saw that goes down episode by episode did mention special guest Paul Lynde. I should have known better because Filmation didn't pay for anybody. I mean, Lou Scheimer's doing voices. You got, all the budget went to Adam and Bert. Right?
Exactly.
That was it. I know. So it was like, hey, if we need a Paul Lynde voice, you get Lenny to do a Paul Lynde. But I actually, all these years, I thought it was Paul Lynde
because it's so
he's spot
good.
on. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah,
it's really good.
According to French chef Julia Child, how much is a pinch?
$5.
But according to French chef Julia Child, how much is a pinch?
Now stick with me. It's just enough to turn her on.
How much is a pinch?
A pinch is just enough that you can get between a thumb and your index finger.
I'll agree.
No, it's a half teaspoon.
Oh, well, who cares?
We can't for the next day, Lee.
I wouldn't come any close if I were you. The ledge you two are standing on is nothing more than a graham cracker.
We've heard a lot of Paul Lynde. I mean, you and I both, everybody does a Paul Lynde. But it's so good. It's so good. So it's kind of like getting Paul Lynde, but it's not.
You had to wonder, too, then, it's like, what was he thinking in doing that voice? Because, Sweet Tooth, he's fat. He's a fat guy. Paul Lynde was not fat.
Yeah.
He wasn't skinny, but he wasn't a fat man. Could I see him playing the role? Absolutely. Made him, but then again, who knows? Maybe he didn't see any character sketches. He just thought Sweet Tooth and look at this dialogue. Oh, wow, I could really ham it up here or something,
Well, and don't forget, Hollywood Squares was really big at the time, too. Like back in that, Paul Lynde was really big. He had done a little bit of voiceover work, Charlotte's Web.
Right.
With Wilbur. I think he was, Wilbur's the,
he was
the rat.
Yes, he was the rat.
In that, but I'm drawing a blank on the name, but he had that very distinctive voice. And also like Charles Nelson Riley had that very distinctive voice. Mm-hmm. So I think when you're just trying to get this kind of wacky, goofy character who would have overloaded on sugar and sweets, it just seemed, again, Paul Lynde was huge back at that time too. So, but you couldn't afford him either. That was the tricky part. And Lou Scheimer is not going to, again, they're trying to keep all the animation here in the States. They're trying to do everything in-house. So limited budgets, and they're cranking out so much product at the time. I mean, they basically owned CBS on Saturday mornings.
Yes.
Back in the day. It was all Filmation. So when you're cranking out that much product, you're limited in your funds. So if you want Paul Lynde, just get somebody to sound like Paul Lynde. And he does a great job of it. But it's interesting, too. We talk about the character of Sweet Tooth. We've talked about how these characters are beloved by current animators of Batman. Sweet Tooth and somebody you're familiar with, Simon the Pieman.
Simon the Pieman.
From the 68 animators. They make cameos in the second season episode of Batman the Brave and the Bold, A Bat Divided. They're in there.
Oh.
So, yeah. So when you watch that episode, there's a barroom fight. It's kind of like one of those supervillain, like all the supervillains kind of hang out in one place and Batman crashes in. But it's there. If you want to check that out, if you got that, or I think you can find it online somewhere too, but if you have the DVD set. But check that out and you'll find those two Filmation characters popping up in there. Wow. So we've mentioned that before, that this is a series beloved by many current animators. So it's very cool to see them. They're still around. Yeah. Those characters didn't got out of prison or something, and then, who knows what he did after that? Went back to Life of Crime, maybe? I don't know.
Now, I got to say, I'm really confused by this whole opening here.
I called you all together to see this.
What is it, Commissioner?
This is a special Valentine from the Sweet Tooth.
Happy Valentine's Day, Gotham City. I couldn't let this day go by without a token of my appreciation. As you read this, a sweet treat is coming your way. Oh, no need to thank me. I'm just a sweet guy.
Sweet Tooth can only mean sour things for Gotham City.
Why does Gordon call in Bruce and Dick about Sweet Tooth?
Okay. I'm going to stop you right here because we have to at least put one caveat on this episode, is that the series is nuts, but this episode is so bug nuts crazy.
It is.
We can't question anything. If we start to question anything, it's all going to come unraveled here. I agree with you. We referenced this a little bit. Why are they called in? And Barbara calls Gordon Commissioner.
Yes.
I know there's different, like in the Batman George Clooney movie, she's Alfred's niece.
Right.
I think, but have they ever established in this series that that's her dad?
Not yet. I don't think there's been a direct reference to father-daughter, but she's called Barbara Gordon. She's Miss Gordon.
Right. And in the Batman 66 show, we know she was,
she definitely was. Yes.
So why is she calling him commissioner here? And here she's the assistant district attorney.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So, but again, why are Bruce and Dick called in? I don't know.
I have a weird theory about this
because they're the only characters that Scheimer had access.
Well, no, see, I have a weird theory about this. I've got a feeling something got really screwed up in this whole opening segment. I think that they are actually supposed to be Batman, Robin, and Batgirl. I think they're supposed to be, but something, because I don't know, and I got to go back and look at it, if Gordon actually refers to any of them by their first names, Bruce, Dick, and Barbara, or if they're just talking. Because later on, you know, they set up this whole thing where they're supposed to be watching in the park for Sweet Tooth because he's threatened the water supply and everything like that. By the way, right out of the 66 show, Joker did that several times. But at one point, Dick and Bruce refer to themselves as Batman and Robin, not as Dick and Bruce. And I thought to myself, why are they doing that? Because that's a pet peeve of mine. It's something Jim Beard and I are talking about in the 43 serial, because all the time, you know, Bruce will come running, or Batman will come running out and be like, Dick, where are you? And it's like, dude, Robin, where are you?
Right. Be careful with the secret identity thing too. Well, one thing I thought too was like, does Gordon, we may be way overthinking this for Filmation series. Does he suspect that they are the Cape Crusaders and just doesn't care because, you know, Barbara's the assistant district attorney, but she's also back. Does he just know that they're all who they are? Because it would make more sense if he called in all of them in costume because they're crime fighters. You know, well, Bruce he's a millionaire, and what does Dick do? He's a student. So, does he suspect that maybe they are, and that's why he's calling them in? I don't know. There's nobody else around, so maybe he feels comfortable. I don't know.
Well, does he suspect it, or even more so, does Bruce and Dick know that Barbara is Batgirl? Because later on, there's a part there where Barbara says to Bruce and Dick, you know, maybe I should call in Batgirl or something to that effect. And they're like, yes, maybe, like, or are you just trying to tell us you've got like a connect, you know, like you've got the bat phone to her or something? You know, there's this weird thing where it's like, do they all know who they all are? And like you say, does Gordon know as well?
It's probably easier just to assume that. I mean, in the 66 series, they definitely did not know that she was bad. I mean, they made, you know, who's this mysterious Batgirl? You know, they're always doing things like that. You know, it's a cartoon. We might be overthinking it, but there are some head scratchers. Gordon definitely didn't know that they were the Cape Crusaders in the last episode that we talked about, the Catwoman episode.
Right,
so
that's true.
I don't know. Maybe, you know, does he suspect? I mean, hopefully he's good at deduction. I don't know. But yeah, he calls them in. Again, in the real world, what it really happens is that Filmation only had access to these characters because they're using stock footage of things. And if you bring in other characters or do other things, you have to draw them, you have to animate them, and you have to spend money. So the reality is Scheimer didn't want to spend the money.
Right.
And I think it just makes it a little weird. Again, as a little kid, 8, 9, 10-year-old kid watching this, you're not asking those questions.
Right.
You're just waiting for Bruce and Dick to put on the outfits. You're waiting for Bat-Mite to show up. You're waiting for the Batgirl cycle. That's all.
Yeah.
So you kind of, again, especially with this episode, none of it makes any sense. It's just so weird and out there, and nothing makes sense at all. And I think that's why I gravitate toward this one, because you know, Mark Fink, who wrote it, just basically went, you know, whatever. How wacky can I get with this? Hey, this doesn't make sense. Doesn't matter. It's a Saturday morning cartoon, and we're just going to throw all the sugar and chocolate and candy and gum at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Speaking of that candy, I again, little things that I just stop and go, why not? Why didn't Batman cap the water hydrant once we got the flow of candy, jelly, or whatever it was going there, and one of the hydrants burst open? Batman just sort of passes it out and doesn't try and fix it.
Okay, right. That's where your brain gravitated toward. Mine gravitated toward this one. I was thinking more of Sweet Tooth. Again, this technology and patents and money making, and what are they trying to? Why doesn't he sell the tech that he has for turning the water supply into chocolate syrup? Why doesn't he sell that tech to Hershey or Nestle?
Yeah,
and make millions and billions? And it's the Dr. Evil thing all over again. It's the Catwoman thing, turning trash into trash and in a trash and show. You know,
right?
I don't know. That's where my brain gravitates toward. If he just went, hey, I can make chocolate out of water, sure, you'd be a billionaire. That's all. I don't know. Maybe he's just warped. Maybe he just wants to, again, look, let's take it down a really weird rabbit hole. Some people just want to watch the world burn, John.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, sometimes you're Joker and you just want to watch the world burn, and maybe Sweet Tooth just wanted to watch the world turn into chocolate.
Maybe.
And maybe Batman didn't know how to cap it. Maybe he didn't have that in his Bat utility belt that day. I have no idea. It doesn't make any sense. None of it makes any sense.
I will say one thing. That we mentioned it last episode, and you're right. This was the episode. I said how I'm starting to agree with you that Robin could be just as annoying and maybe sometimes more annoying and not so helpful as Bat-Mite, because when they finally confront Sweet Tooth, Robin goads him. Because Sweet Tooth is holding the city for ransom. So when he goads him and starts taunting him and stuff.
We know you've sealed your chocolate water system with an electronic combination lock. If you know what's good for you, you'll give up the lock and turn yourself in. I personally guarantee a light sentence.
Don't sweet talk me, Batman.
Prison will do you good. You can learn a trade, something you can get your sweet tooth into.
That's not funny, boy blunder. Just for that, my ransom is now up to 10 million.
You're impossible to deal with, Sweet Tooth.
Nice going, dumb,
Right. If Robin would just shut up.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have, he made a problem worse.
Yeah.
He definitely Bat-Mited that situation.
He did.
And that's this episode is so weird. Black is white, up is down, right is wrong. Bat-Mite is the one thing that makes absolute sense in this episode, because they're all doing goofy things like that. And Bat-Mite actually saves the day. There's a scene where he stops Batman and Robin from getting hit by a giant block of caramel.
Yes.
Okay. If Bat-Mite is the voice of reason, your episode is weird, man. It's just, one thing else we talked about, like the Filmation music I wanted to reference too. A lot of that, the theme we just hear over. It is an awesome theme song.
It is.
But it's played constantly. But in this one, we do get a funky, cool version of the theme song.
They never appreciate me.
By the look of things, I can see we don't have too much time. What the blazes? That blasted Bat-Mite?
Batman, look!
There's like this, like a different version of it.
Yep.
So people can go back and check that out. But I thought that was pretty cool. So that was another interesting episode, or interesting element of this episode. But I think it's right before Bat-Mite saves the day on this one. So again, cool music, which is different, and Bat-Mite saving the day, awesome. So there's some really cool things that happen in this one.
Yep. No, there is too. The only thing I was really disappointed, we didn't get the recipe for chocolate fudge marshmallow jelly cookies.
I think the recipe's in the name, isn't it? You just grab all that stuff and shove it in a bowl.
Shove it in a bowl.
But hearing Adam West say that.
Not just a cookie, a chocolate fudge marshmallow jelly cookie.
That's gold.
Yes.
Just hearing him talk and eating the cookie, and I can just imagine the recording session with Adam. That alone is gold.
Yeah.
For this. It's just such a weird episode. If people haven't seen it, my goodness, just check it out.
You have to check.
It's just you.
But then speaking,
you can't hate it.
No, you can't.
You have to love it in a Mystery Science Theater kind of way.
I don't hate it. I will say it's actually a cut above the Catwoman episode that we last did. But
oh yeah.
There were little things that bothered me, and then there were other wonderful things that because I like the fact that Sweet Tooth actually gets captured early on, but the thing is, he won't release the computer lock on the water system so the water can be freed. The candy is still flowing. So, they have to deal with that. But of course he escapes. So, story continues. I liked that. But one of the things I noticed as I was watching this, and you mentioned Adam's delivery, is that overall, with few exceptions, most of the time, Adam's delivery is not like it was in the 66 series. It wasn't that, halting, almost staccato, way of, like that frustrated the hell out of Bert at times because, Bert's trying to just hit his marks and say his lines. And there's Adam dragging the scene out, because he's the star. Here, he's being more straightforward with his delivery most of the time, except like when we get with the cookies.
Right. Well, and you know why he did that on the original series, too.
He wanted more screen time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have screen time on this one. He's not on it. It's just the voice. And don't forget, you can edit when they were editing audio. So they may have just taken all those pause. Maybe he did, I don't know. But you've got to fit this in a certain thing. So you can just imagine the recording session and they're probably like, hey, Adam, you need to say that line in 5 seconds, not 15. You know what I mean?
Right.
I could see those happening. Or they just, thanks, Adam, and he walks out the door and they just shorten it up too.
Right.
But on screen, you're seeing him doing it. So if he drags it out, he's going to drag
it out.
Yeah, so it's definitely a little bit different cadence to this here. You mentioned about Sweet Tooth getting captured too. Again, this episode is so crazy. Their plan is to hide out in the dump.
Yes.
To trap him
with a box of cookies. Well, no, it's the box
why in
with
a
the
dump?
It's got the candy. I'm not the candy.
But why are they in a dump? Why are they hiding out in a dump to get him? I don't know. That was weird. It reminded me like some of the Shazam things where they always took place in like wrecked auto yards and dumps and what was Filmation's obsession with these like garbage areas and things? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just thought that was a little strange. And then you also referenced the escape that he has too. Apparently Sweet Tooth's kids can fly a helicopter.
Overall, that was the only thing I had a problem with this episode was just because, again, I'm thinking in 2020 mentality, and it's not a good thing, but it's like, he's contributing to the delinquency of minors. We've got 3 obese kids with 1 tooth each or whatever.
One tooth, they're hoping to get to the point of their dad by having 1 tooth.
Right.
It's like the 1 tooth actually falls out in the kid's head, and he's like, "Oh, I'm getting close to you, Dad." And it's like, wait, what? and again, it's so strange for Filmation because they're so like education.
Right.
This is good, and we're going to teach kids good. Okay, maybe the theory is they're villains, so they're not taking care of their teeth. They don't have good oral hygiene, and so they're villains, and that makes them bad. So don't do this. I guess that's the theory. I don't know, but it seems like Sweet Tooth should be locked up for so much more than these things. And where's Mrs. Sweet Tooth? Where, like, is there a Mrs. Sweet Tooth, or did she just get fed up and go like, I'm out of here. This is ridiculous. I can't live in this giant ice cream cone, building in the middle of Gotham City. Real good camouflage, by the way, for their secret hideout. It's a giant ice cream cone. None of it makes sense, John.
No, but it leads to what is actually my favorite part because, again, another 66 reference. Dick goes undercover.
There has to be some way we can sneak that computerized lock away from Sweet Tooth.
I think this calls for an inside job, Dick.
What do you mean, Bruce?
I want you to go undercover.
Me?
Yes. It's too risky for you to go it as Robin. They'll know who you are for sure. If you go as Dick Grayson, you slip in as one of Sweet Tooth's kids.
It's worth a try.
I think this can work, Dick. Here's what we do.
How can they keep eating this stuff? Sweet Tooth is planning to hit the Nutty Chocolate Factory on Tuesday. Can you hear me, Batman?
We hear you, Dick. What about the computer lock for the water system? Where does he keep it?
Working on it.
Yes.
I mean, I know he's done it plenty of times in the comics too, but we always remember Burt Ward's turn in the Joker episode. Joker goes to school and he goes undercover. And here he is doing it again, and it's Burt Ward doing it again.
Right. I love that aspect of it. His disguise is awful.
It is.
Shoves a pillow under his sweater, and he blacks his teeth out.
Yep.
It's really creepy. And so these are Sweet Tooth's kids, right? Again, I might be overthinking this. They're his kids. Is there like an extra kid that pops up at some point? Because there's 3 and then
4
there's
suddenly.
4. And then Dick's 5. And he doesn't notice. Are there just so many? Is he like Willy Wonka and there's just like the Oompa Loompas and he just doesn't know how many there are? I don't know. It just goes back and forth and it's the Filmation thing. Again, he's got this factory just produce candy.
Yeah.
Your candy's probably good, I'm guessing.
And it's a big factory because he's got giant conveyor belts that he can put Dick on when Dick is, caught out and he's got him on the conveyor. It's huge enough. So you must be making quite a bit of candy there.
Yeah. And you're making giant donuts.
I loved the animation where the two of them have that, rubber belt or whatever, and they're repelling. Yeah. I thought that was so beautifully fluid.
Could you imagine like a Lego set of like Batman 77 Lego Sweet Tooth's lair or Sweet Tooth Candy Factory? That'd be like a crazy cool toy, right?
Yeah.
There's so much going on here. You have a little conveyor belt and you can have Dick going down the conveyor belt. Like giant donuts. But again, mass produce these things.
Yeah.
Bakeries would love these things. It just, you could make more money. I don't know. And maybe, he's just so bent that he doesn't figure that out.
Right.
That I could make money selling these things. Some people just want to watch the world burn.
Yeah.
And some people just want to sling giant donuts. I don't know. It makes no sense.
And we get Batgirl.
We do get Batgirl.
At the end, she shows up to save the two of them now because they get caught in a taffy trap.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course they do. Of course they do. But isn't that the cool thing? Again, they're trapped. The dynamic duo are trapped.
Yes.
Not Batgirl. Batgirl has to come save them. That is so far ahead of the curve on this animated series.
Yes.
The easy thing would be to just go, let's put Batgirl in jeopardy, tie her up. She can't get out of this, throw her in a tent, and the dynamic duo have to come and save the day. Right. Nope. Flip it. Flip the script. Good on you, Mark Fink.
Yeah. No, I agree. I overall, yeah, this was better than the Catwoman. It's a fun episode. I did have, you didn't happen to know this because I don't know why, because we talked about the kids, but the one that stood out to me, because she only had one line, was the little girl. And I'm like, who did her voice?
Well, I mean, would it have been Melody?
Maybe, but if it is, that's really good then of her, because it didn't sound like we said last episode with Catwoman and her, you might have, if unless you were really paying attention, you wouldn't know that was the same person playing both roles.
Right.
This one though is really off the beaten path, and I was like thinking, if it is her, she's really good.
Well, maybe they tweaked it electronically too.
That's
and
true.
she is really good. But don't forget, if we didn't know it, how would you know Scheimer was Bat-Mite?
That's true.
I mean, so there. And by the way, speaking of Bat-Mite, again, he saves the day, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about Batgirl saving the dynamic duo, but in order to pull them out of the taffy, she doesn't have the weight of two guys, right? And so who helps her out? Bat-Mite shows up to save the day to
Yep.
How is he heavier? I don't know. Maybe because he has superpowers and things.
Well, if you put his weight and Batgirl's together, because remember, they first lift Robin out, and then the three of them lift Batman out.
That's right. They go. Yeah, it's the three of them. But yeah, they do need Bat-Mite to save the day on that as well too. And one other before we close this episode out, we talk about the Filmation errors. I did make a note. One cool thing you want to check is that when the Batmobile pulls up the second, Robin's in the Batmobile when he's already trapped on the conveyor belt early. So there's your stock footage coming in.
Yep.
Yeah, just a crazy episode. There's so many, but the redemption of Bat-Mite. To me, if there's anything that this episode is about, it's a very cool Paul Lynde imitation and the redemption of Bat-Mite. He's there to save the day, and he saves them from themselves often. Yeah. So deal with that, Bat-Mite haters.
He saves them from the day, but there is that little bit there earlier on, like when he did save them, from plowing into the candy in the street in the Batmobile.
Right.
And Batman says, "Yeah, the little fella saved us, but the way he went about it wasn't the best way."
Give me a break, Batman. You know what? You're going to go cry. You know what? You'd have been still stuck in that caramel if it weren't for Batman. I didn't like the way he saved us. He should save us in a better Bat way. Whatever. Give me a break. Yeah, whatever. Deal with it, Batman. You'd be glad to have Bat-Mite around because he's going to save your bat butt each and every time.
And now, these messages. Now, here is a corn lover, and there's nothing more gratifying to a corn lover than to know that her mother has given her delicious Del Monte family-style corn. More people eat it than any other corn like it. It's a special strain developed to be sweet and tender. And when a corn lover is eating Del Monte corn, she probably doesn't need to hear me talking about how good it is, right? Well, then I'm just going to go into the living room and talk about corn to the sofa.
Doesn't feel good for Daddy and me. Mom brings Del Monte home. Sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't. Almond Joy's got nuts, Mounds don't. Almond Joy's got real milk chocolate, coconut and munchy nuts too. Mounds got deep dark chocolate and chewy coconut. Ooh. Sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't. Peter Paul, Almond Joy's got nuts, Peter Paul, Mounds don't. Sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't.
That message.
Boy, I'm sure glad we're rid of him. He really gave us a tough time.
And he almost ruined the health of those kids.
That's right.
We caught you again. What do you have to say for yourself this time?
I am no what? Not much.
Oh, and I think even at the end of this episode again, he says, or maybe it was the last one, he was like, I'll do even better next time or something. Again, in our bat message that is totally pointless.
Yes. What was it? He almost ruined the health of those kids.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a little late on that one.
Right.
I mean, I think their health is pretty much ruined. And we talk about this. I sent you a couple links, before we recorded. This was CBS. Filmation, we always talk about we've got to educate the kids. We got to teach them things. What a wasted opportunity here, because what was going on over on ABC, people back in the day that were listeners watching Saturday morning cartoons back in the day, they know those PSAs, those public service announcements on ABC. Timer, this little cartoon character Timer, he came out and did these PSAs on healthy eating and brushing your teeth. Hanker for a hunk of cheese. If people remember that song, I hanker for a hunk of cheese. Making wagon wheels out of like little crackers and. If you just have to have a snack, here's a healthier option. They're on YouTube. Yep. Go watch them. They're pretty cool. But what an opportunity that Batman and Robin could have taught you about healthy eating and good oral hygiene.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
The bat toothbrush, the bat brush. I mean, these things, pull something out of the utility belt. Do something, guys. Come on.
It's funny because I watched the credits this time for the end of this one. There's no mention of educational people helping out with this series.
No,
like
it was such an afterthought. Ones. Exactly. There's if they had it, they probably would have went, hey guys, could you do, here's an idea you could put in.
Right.
It was almost felt like they had to do this because it was Filmation. Maybe that was a rule. Maybe it was a mandate by Scheimer. I don't know. But yeah, these were so tagged on at the end. It just, those to me are the lamest part of the series. I'm just really not, at least to this point, in the episodes, they haven't been stellar. And can you tell me at all what Bat-Mite says at the end?
I don't know. Yeah.
I have no idea. I'm probably going to have to put the subtitles on or something like that. I didn't have a chance to do that, but I have no idea what he says at the end. It's one of the strangest, maybe possibly the strangest episode in the series, and one of the weirdest endings too. It's but you got to love it.
Oh,
you can't. It's so bug nuts crazy. You have to love it.
No, absolutely. I agree. And I just want to again point out now this time, DC Universe's comic suggestion was in no way connected other than they said, hey, if you like candy themed stuff, here's a candy themed comic. And in fact, they don't even suggest Batman. They go over to Action Comics 104.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called Candy.
I'll bite. I'll bite on the candy. I'll bite on the lollipop. What is it?
It's called Candy Town, USA. It's a story with the prankster. And he convinces Daniel R. Sweettooth, the president of the Metropolis Candy Company, to build an entire candy town, a whole town, an amusement park made of candy that the kids could eat. And I guess they would repair as they go along and stuff. The thing is, as he's heading up the construction, he sours all the candy, because then what he does is he's also secretly building his own candy town so that he can steal all the business.
The prankster does.
The prankster does.
So was this Sweet Tooth? You said the guy, his name was Sweet Tooth?
The president of the company, yeah. That he cons.
Is that Sweet Tooth? Is that the origin story?
He
was he inspired? I'm making stuff up here as I go. Was he inspired by prankster? Did he realize something? And is that the origin of Sweet Tooth? Or was this like maybe a predecessor of Sweet Tooth? Was this like Sweet Tooth's grandfather or something? Who knows?
Now that I could accept that was his, because the candy business always ran in the family and stuff. And
sure,
they kind of, after Grandpa made the big mistake with the.
Maybe I'm not going to make that same mistake.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna have really unhealthy children coming out. Maybe we've seen the origin of Sweet Tooth here. I don't know. Maybe DC Comics knows more than we think they do.
Maybe.
maybe that weird cryptic comic book suggestion told us something. We may be delving way too much into the animated series.
Well, I do have a bad habit of trying to fill in gaps a lot of times.
Yeah. But that's what we do. I mean, that's when we look at some of these things. That's the fun part, is to see like what other adventures could have come out of this, or it's fun to kind of do that. Can you imagine like Sweet Tooth fan fiction springing forth from this? I don't know. Come on, listeners, impress us. Give us some Sweet Tooth fan fiction. Write your own backstory. What's the origin of Sweet Tooth? How did he come to have these kids? Where's Mrs. Sweet Tooth? We want answers.
Well, if he was a 66 villain, he could have easily been played by Paul Lynde, because Paul Lynde was already a known commodity even back then. More so in movies than in television at that point. But he could have been on the show. Would they have, given him a fat suit, or would they have just had him be, like a Willy Wonka type?
Could you imagine if Orson Welles had done it?
Ooh.
Because wasn't he in the Muppet movie?
Yes.
And that would have been 1979. So if you're, by extension, if you go back a couple of years, he was doing like weird things like this.
Right.
He was the voice of Robin Masters on Magnum PI. So he was getting blitzed on wine as they were trying to shoot the wine commercials, and they couldn't get through it. So yeah, he was that Orson Welles. That's my choice. I'm going.
You're going Orson Welles. Okay.
Although, but I love the Paul Lynde voice. It just seems appropriate for. I wish they'd put a little lisp in it, because the dude did only have one tooth.
Yes.
They should have had like a Paul Lynde with a lisp. Would have been kind of cool. But I digress.
But still, overall, definitely take a look at this one, folks. If you going to dive into this series at all, because it's one of the more oddball ones, but it's got a lot of fun. And there's some really, like I said, the whole thing with the donuts. I love the animation choices on some of this.
Yeah, I love it. It's one of my favorite episodes, and it just because it is so weird, and it just like as you watch it, you're like, why, and then you just stop doing it and go, all right.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one of my favorites.
All right, so as we come to the end of this episode here, let's quickly get in a plug here for Comic Book Central. If people want to take a listen. And I guess you've never done anything. Have you ever done an episode that I can think of now off the top of my head, because I'm trying to go through your library of what I've listened to? Anything to do with Filmation 77?
Filmation 77. I mean, not specific with this Batman,
right?
No, we talked a little bit about that on the last episode, hoping to maybe get Burt Ward back on the show, maybe talk a little bit about that. But no, nothing specifically. Have reached out to Melody. She has booked up her interviews for the year, which who knows, maybe there's some time, always a good chance to reach back out. Plus she did so many other Filmation voices,
right?
Too. So it'd be really cool to talk to her, but nothing specifically, but I'm kind of looking at that. But obviously Filmation, I've done, a bunch of stuff over the years, with especially the Shazam ISIS.
Right.
Those episodes are all out there. We talked about the last one, the Comic Book Central commentary on Goodbye Packy with Michael Gray and John Davey. So those are out there. And again, it's comicbookcentral.net. If people, there's people got some time on their hands, you're looking for some podcasts, over 300 episodes out there. You mentioned too, over 200 of your episodes. So what, there's 500.
There's 500 right there.
I think we've taken care of your downtime.
There you go.
Between John and myself, there's a lot of other good, great, amazing podcasts out there. We reference them all the time. But yeah, 500 episodes. If you're not familiar with the show, if you're new, go check them out, man. Comicbookcentral.net is where mine is. Spreaker.com, Apple Podcasts, and again, subscribe to the Batcave podcast, subscribe to Comic Book Central. You won't miss an episode, and you get the whole back catalog too.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff of just people bringing comic books to life. Actors, writers, producers, directors, composers, comic book writers and art. I mean, there's just a ton of stuff out there.
Very cool. Very cool. So, folks, that's going to do it then for this episode of the Batcave podcast. Stay tuned. Jim and I will be back talking Batman 43, and Joe and I will be back real soon. Our next episode, we've got another new villain here in Professor Bubbles.
Professor Bubbles. This series is nuts if we haven't told you that already.
Professor Bubbles. This one I don't know. This one I don't remember at all. Other than I have this vague recollection of him having kind of a voice. That's the only thing I remember from it. Like he had bubbles in his throat.
If you haven't developed a love for this series by now, you have no soul. It's just so nuts, and it's so 70s, and it's so cool.
It is. So that'll be coming along very shortly, folks. Until then, thank you so much for listening. Once again, Joe, citizens, take care, everybody.